So the next big one that can get you more outsized customers than anything else is answering a specific question, which I ask as a great thought exercise with our team is, what would it take to be number one? And another way of asking this question is, what else would have to be true for us to be number one in our market? And so when we actually hypothesize about this, we think, okay, what would it look like for us to be number one? What else would have to be true? What else would have to have occurred? What's interesting about this question is that it circumvents the traditional incremental thinking. Meaning, instead of saying, okay, we're just gonna do 10% more, we're gonna do 10% better, we're gonna do 20% better. When you start with the end in mind from a what would it take for us to be number one, we assume the goal outcome. And the crazy thing about this question is that you might be 1/100th the size of the number one player in the market, but it assumes what it would take to be 100 times bigger. And then it gets reverse engineered into the present. And so what happens oftentimes when I ask this question is they usually state one or two key big things that would have to happen for the business to be number one. And then I ask, what would it cost for us to do that? Do we have the resources in order to make that happen? And more times than not, we actually have the resources to make that happen. Then the next actual question is, then why are we not putting every one of the resources we have right now towards making that come true rather than just continuing on the path that we're on? And so this is an order of magnitude increase in terms of business growth and ultimately what generates the most leads and customers. And so when I asked myself this question years ago, it was, what would it take for me to be the number one business channel, right? What would it take for that to happen? The question beyond that was, what would it take for us to be able to have one of the best investment firms in the world? And I was like, well, I would have to have many, many, many more years of experience. I was like, I don't know if I can do that. I can't make time happen faster. So then I followed with, okay, so for me to be the best investor, then what I would want is the most deal flow. So what are the different ways of creating deal flow? One of them is you can just go to broker networks. So you go to investment bankers, you get them to send you deals, and then you bid on those deals. But if I want to be the best investor in the world, then I need deals that only come to me. And so I was like, okay, well, thankfully, I'm pretty good at marketing. And so I was like, why don't I, what would have to be true for me to get lots of inbound deal flow? I was like, okay, well, probably building a massive brand around business. And so then the question was, how do I build the number one brand in business online? And so it's these series of questions that I asked, and then it was, okay, well, I should probably start making content around this. And I should probably write a book or something that would do really well, that is in the business space, that business owners would read and then think, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. And so by doing those things, by publishing the books, by making the content consistently, and the moment I realized that that was what it would take, I basically put all of my resources towards doing that, despite the fact that in the moment, it basically meant nothing. It meant that I had to go write a book, and it meant that I had to start making content. But I did all of those things because I thought, for me to be number one, I need to have proprietary deal flow. For me to have proprietary deal flow, I need to have a big business brand. For me to have a big business brand, I need to make more content that's better than everybody else. And so that's what I'll start doing now. And that's where I'll allocate my resources. Even though I could have done a lot of different things, that was the one that I felt at the time would give me the most leverage. And so far, it has worked out. But asking that type of question, you don't get to that type of solution unless you ask the what would it take to be number one. And then sometimes the answers surprise you because you do have the resources to do it, you just haven't yet. And the reason this question is so powerful is actually from Steven Schwartzman. So in his book, or his autobiography, I think it's What It Takes, I think it's what it's called. He has this really amazing opening couple of chapters, and he talks about this idea of thinking big. And he says, building a really big business is hard. Building a small business is hard. So basically, it's just about as hard to do anything because hard is a constant. So you might as well go after something really big with the equivalent amounts of hardness. Now, we can get into difficulty levels or whatever, but basically, the upside of the incremental increase in hardness is outsized. And so if you want to build a really successful restaurant, it's going to take you a really long time. You have to manage lots of people, and it's a tough business. And if you want to build one of the top software companies in the world, it's also going to take a long time and be really hard. But one of those could get you into the many billions, and one of them will probably cap at $1 million or $2 million a year. And so in thinking about that, both of them required the same internal resources from you, but very different external resources. And so it's like you might as well solve for the biggest thing. And this is about resourcefulness, not resources. If we wanted to be number one in the market, part of having proprietary deal flow comes with two big advantages. And this works the same if you're selling customers, the same idea, sell in a vacuum. But there's two different ways that you can sell in a vacuum. And the reason selling in a vacuum is so important is because when you sell in a vacuum, you no longer have to compete on price, or in my instance, terms. And so the first is you sell where no one else is selling. So that's you find the little pond where there are no other fishermen, and then you fish there, and you get all the fish you want. The second way is to sell something that no one else sells. And so one is a where thing, and the other is a what thing. So either you create something unique that you have some sort of feature or service that no one else can do because you have some sort of technological advantage. Fundamentally, this is what Elon does in every one of his businesses. He's happy to go where it's super competitive, but he just sells something that no one else can sell. And then he can command a premium price for it. The alternative is to be good at providing value at scale to people so you get inbound demand. And then at that point, they're not choosing between you and 6 other people. They're saying, I'm either working with you or I'm not doing it.